of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I was here last year, and I enjoyed the conversation there, and I thought, for the discussion, the theme of this event was really interesting to me because it really started getting me thinking about the ethics associated with knowledge management and the social media aspects of things. And one of the first things that popped into my mind when I was thinking about that was journalism, right? Because it's the whole ethical aspects of journalism that they go and verify facts before they write about it, and the impact of the internet and blogging and wikis and all those things just being expressions of opinion as being a journalist, journalism associated with that. But then, of course, even within the context of thinking about it from a journalism perspective, there was a movie that came out this spring called State of Play. How many of you have seen that? A few of you. I have a small clip here I was going to play just to sort of emphasize sort of the thoughts and the thought-provoking aspects of even that when you think about the power of free press. So I thought it was an interesting aspect of things because it starts to bring to bear sort of the balance that we all have to take, right, with regards to business needs versus ethical decisions and purity of ethical decisions. But in this context, it was about a senator, there was a senator scandal associated with it. The two actors on the couch, one was a blogger, so she instantly wrote about it as soon as she heard about it, and the other person was a writer for the newspaper. Of course, he went and did some fact-checking and challenged her on what she was blogging about, and it became the associate, both of them working together in terms of trying to get to the bottom of the story. And it took time to go and assimilate and investigate and fuse that information to really be factual in how it turns out. I won't talk about the story anymore, but the whole point is that, even with regards to journalism and the aspects of ethics within that context of knowledge and what's being written about, even in that context, you have to question the biases and look for other sources and think about other views and alternatives. So with regards to that, I was thinking about there's three major areas that I think are important to talk about. One is trust, and we've had a variety of little discussion about that earlier today. The next is transparency, and the value of transparency in terms of building up a notion of, do I have all the facts, and how is my opinion being viewed? And then the last, of course, being policy. How can you apply and enforce policy with regards to how you do things with the information you have at hand in gathering and disseminating knowledge? So with regards to trust, I have a clip from an advertiser, goes back a little ways, but hopefully it gets the point across. So the point being is, even the aspect of social components around knowledge management, the social piece has always been there. Right? We were talking about word of mouth marketing, if you will, back in the 70s. So for those of you who still remember when that was first aired, that aspect of things, you understand that knowledge management, knowledge gathering is becoming more and more a priority for organizations. Right? They're trying to pick our brains and understand it and try to transfer it and capture it. The trust aspects of things come into play in terms of the socio-political economic aspects of things, in terms of, is there a hidden agenda around that knowledge gathering? Is it so it's just another euphemism, if you will, for downsizing? Is it an aspect of transferring jobs to another location? And the value of thinking about that, even if that is the hidden agenda, and we're not being transparent about that during the gathering process, for all of us to be thinking about it, saying, if I am transferring that information, if I am being selfless in providing the information so that the organization can learn from it and improve, I should be thinking about that in terms of, how do I gain in terms of self-improvement? So the idea and concept of succession being a piece not just for succession of your job and the position, but also in terms of your own self-interest, in terms of making sure that you're going to gain from the process as well, whether you take on a new position or not. And we had an instance of this in our company where we were in the process of transferring a complete engineering group over to India. We had just had a terrible quarter. We're looking at cutting costs within our organization, so we're going offshore. And one of the engineers, I thought, took a very interesting approach to the problem, which he said, you know, listen, I have two choices here. One is I can fight it, be very disgruntled about it, and say, okay, I'm not going to go along with this. I'm not going to help my successor gain the information and make sure the product carries on. Or I can take this opportunity to really improve myself and all of a sudden have something to talk about in terms of management opportunity and say, you know what, I'm going to learn how to manage that global group. I'm going to help manage that offshore team and try to improve myself and gain something I can add to my resume. And I thought that was a very interesting approach in terms of looking at the opportunity that presented itself. And he ended up doing the latter. He ended up saying, you know what, I'm going to manage that team over in India. I'm going to make sure that I do the best job possible, not only to carry the product forward, but because I'm going to gain something from doing that. The other piece is, and this is some of the information that we talked about last time, right, was social networking analysis. And we all know that we're part of a formal organization, but it's the informal organization that really shows how knowledge is gathered and shared among folks, right? You know, who to email to really get the answer to a question, how to find an expert. That's an important process, especially as companies continually to consolidate and grow from acquisition, is how do you find the new people to go and interact with? So the social network analysis, the technology that's sitting out there now, that we can examine and find the different parts of the social network and understand the gatekeepers, understand the knowledge keepers, understand where you're going to go through the system in order to find that expert, and the relationships that we all form around that. That becomes a big input. It also means that we have to trust that this analysis isn't going to be used against us. So there's an aspect of oversight that needs to be played, that needs to come to bear around this as well. The point being is that the technology is available to look at those relationships, the informal relationships, right? When we read comments about stories or about products to make a buying decision, we're part of that social network. We're looking at other people's opinions to determine what we're going to do, how we're going to take action. The point being is technology is out there gathering that information and presenting it. How is that going to get used? And that's where we have to make sure that there's a trust aspects about that information, make sure that there is oversight around how it's being used. And HR environments are very much key to how that gets used and built out and tracked. The last part is transparency. And in there, we have a couple different things to talk about. One is Wikipedia. Interesting topic for this morning. But an aspect of this, and I sort of term it as wisdom of the crowd, meaning that the whole notion and verifiability of the information, you don't get away from verifying, trust but verify, is the fact that you have the opportunity. So in your case, with the material, now there's an opportunity to go and fix that formula that's sitting out there in the internet. And the fact that you have access and privilege to go and make those modifications and make that improvement, you can even add to it the story about what happened and where it went wrong. You can add to the collective whole. You can add to the wisdom of the crowd associated with that. And the opportunity of dealing with that in terms of finding information that's useful. How many of you have seen the Bing commercials that are on TV these days? So in there, they're talking about, information overload and trying to get to what you want to really discover and use. Well, part of that is being driven from the notion of having many people do a similar search in finding where they land with actual information that they've gathered. And we work with some technology that after 7 people, we can determine what is valuable. And we have some companies that are out there using the technology to improve searches. For example, at tax time, one of our customers uses it to help people improve finding the right form for what they're trying to do. Or an appliance company that's trying to sell products that are more like what you want to have, sort of trying to get into the intent of what you're trying to accomplish and not just raw inverted index and trying to find the density of terms in order to make that decision about what to present to you. That information, the wisdom of the crowd, becoming a very important piece of where transparency is going. And a key example around that is the notion of innovation. And here's a business setting where technology is being applied and approach is being applied as well, a process to make idea management very transparent. So Dell had a very bad reputation. They were going through some very bad times, and it's documented in this book called Citizen Marketers. And it's a great book if you get a chance to take a look at it. It talks about the corporate world and how they have to deal with the new world order that we're living within, and the fact that everything that they do, the negative, especially the negative aspects of things, are out there. Their reputation is under scrutiny by the internet world in terms of what's going on. Because if you don't control, if you don't take care of your customers, the negative side is much more impactful these days, because the speed of which opinions can be expressed and taken care of. But Dell had a very bad reputation going on with some of their support and some of their issues with the products. So they turned the tables. They said, well, let's create this idea management space. They called it Idea Storm. And this is where the transparency comes into play. The ideas of customers and users are expressed and provided on the website, and they get voted up or down. And the value of what they did was they said they actually produced a product that they attributed to Idea Storm to produce a connection between the social environment, the opinion of the user, opinion of the crowd, to direct their product management and product development, and now they produce a product. The product sells well. Now they have a virtuous cycle going on associated with that. And they've built out this notion of the fact that these ideas are out there and we can all express our opinion about it, vote it up, vote it down. We see it all the time with news articles, right? Buzz this, go and express this on Dig, share this article, etc. Our opinions matter. The voice of the customer is much more valid these days than it ever was. And the speed of having the ability to have the debate online is it's available now that we didn't have in the past. And we see some other examples of this. So Deloitte has something that they call Innovation Zone. It's actually a hosted service. They go in and help organizations sort of capture information, let the organization peer review so the peers can actually augment and modify ideas and improve upon them, and they can vote them up and they can track which of their ideas are doing well so they can know whether or not they're going to participate even further. If you think about this from a process perspective, it's replacing the suggestion box. You know, how many of you have organizations say, send your idea to this email and we'll take a look at it? Well, the first thing that happens is a whole bunch of people send emails in, and then you never know, right? There's this black hole of all these ideas and where they went, or the box full of paper did it get collected? Are people looking at it? You know, what happened to my idea? 2, 3 years down the road, maybe something happens to it, but it would have been nice to know whether or not people cared about it. And that's the aspect of transparency and the fact that technology is now there, that we really take this process, and it has to be really dirt simple, right? Because nothing is more simple than just sending a suggestion into the suggestion box, right? It's a very easy process. And trying to replace that with something online, this has to be easy. It has to be very simple to express the idea, see it relative to other ideas, see the expression of it, see other things that are going on. We did this implementation for HP called The Garage, that was an app name, for what they were doing, where, you know, very much along the notion of where my ideas are, what's going on there, what do people think about it, what are the categories of ideas being looked at by the committee of deciding what to take forward, which ones are going to get the next level of business development in terms of looking at the business case, whether or not to go and develop it further, but just the idea that you can look into and see the status of things and get feedback and see your peers give you peer review back, important aspects of that. So, you know, that's the aspect of transparency. Policy, you know, very simple. The whole notion of knowledge management and social media, it's part of the business strategies that we all are deploying. So there is going to be policy associated, right? So what does it mean to go and blog outside of your organization? What is the legal ramifications? We're public entities, the large number of us. So what do you have to deal with because the extra oversight associated with that? So you have to care about policies as it's expressed through different parts of your business. And then, you know, there are a set of products that are out there that can help you. Technology is available for doing things of validating the use of brand, validating how the sentiment of the words are being expressed. Is it providing a negative sentiment or a positive sentiment? So you can deal with the exception handling in the manual process. We can have some automated tools to help you out with that and do things like moderation and workflow, et cetera. And lastly, let me just summarize. I know I'm running short on time here. Your stomachs are growling. We know that things have changed, right? Technology is out there in terms of being able to foster communities, provide the user a voice back into your product development, into what your products you're producing, to the processes that you're dealing with. The opportunity is dealing with that. Also the fact that Enterprise 2.0, making sure you're dealing with risk and governance and compliance needs associated with that, and applying policy is important as well. You can get a total experience. It's not something that's siloed. It has to be something that's a part of the bigger picture around what's happening in our whole information dissemination and learning process. And lastly, we know for sure that technology can enforce and automate policy. What that policy is, you know, still has a lot of, there is going to be manual intervention, we know that, but it can help enforce and automate that. We also know that it can empower transparency and help people feel part of the decision, part of the dissemination that's going on around you. But at the end of the day, building that trust that allows for that self-interest to be expressed, to participate in it, that's all up to us, right? It's all about the trust and verification that goes on. It's about having the multiple sources of information you bring to bear around that and around the trust that we build up and the policies that we apply to it. So, you know, that's something that technology can only take so far. It's really about all of us and how we participate and the fact that we do participate. It's a 90%, 9%, 1% rule that's applying in the social networking world today. 90% are just watchers, 9% participate lightly, the 1% is driving a lot of the activity. So think about that when you think about what's going on in that space. We have to become more participants in it if we want to build trust around how to use the technology to our benefit. Thank you.